We're live on the internet. I almost missed it.
Good evening, everybody.
I missed it. I almost missed it. I didn't miss it, but
Not.
happy holidays.
Happy holidays. How are you doing?
COVID holidays are interesting. They're a little different. I
They
don't know
are.
that I saw this. It's I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. I'm
Yeah.
ready. I'm ready for the vaccine. For all the people out there saying that they won't take the vaccine, that's cool. I'll take yours.
Yep.
I am definitely ready to be into a new phase of things, and that's an unfortunate place to be in right before the winter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Right before things closed down even more than they were before.
yeah,
Yep.
so I mean we'll see, but I am excited about the upcoming part of our season. We're halfway through. We took last week off because we ran a holiday special. And we're very thankful for the over 200 people that watched, and the just about $1,000 raised for the Northeast Regional Folk Alliance. So pretty jazzed about that. But coming up, I think we're just about at the point where we can publish it. Jake, does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're missing. We're almost there. We've almost completed. I think we have one more to fill in, right?
Yep, and then we will publish every single one of them for
Yes.
just in one big go. But we can say right now that next week's guest is Catherine Morris of the Boston Arts, Music, and Soul Organization. Remarkable woman who started essentially almost a guerrilla concert series. She just went to these odd, weird venues in the middle of everywhere in Boston. These old formal, beautiful rooms and these spaces, and got them to say, all right, sure, you can throw a show. And then she contacted local senators and congressmen, and they came. And these are events that have 16-year-olds through 80-year-olds performing all together at various points, and sort of all. It's really I'm super jazzed about that. But we'll talk more about that next week, because we're here to talk about our guest tonight, who is the 2019 Creator of the Year, according to NERFA, the Northeast Regional Folk Alliance. And that was a really fair. That was well deserved. He started this wonderful organization called Folk Music Notebook, and it's just been amazing. And he literally has come up with a type of evolution that I think the folk scene has needed for a while, for terrestrial radio, as the digital world has sort of come up. So
Yeah, he's definitely taken the reins of that transition coming out of terrestrial radio, but really sort of seizing on the new medium, and doing great things with it. He played us years and years ago on terrestrial radio, and then
suck it.
yeah, um, and then I think, as happens with many of our guests, there has been a mutual admiration society for a while. We've very much appreciated what he's been doing in that transition in media, and he's enjoyed what we've been doing musically and otherwise. So we've done a lot of fun stuff together.
Yeah. So instead of continuing to talk about him while he's not here, considering he can see us, I feel like this is the wonderful, awkward part where I'm tempted to make fun of our guests, but I don't, because I like them. By the way, what you drinking? But water now, I'm assuming.
Well,
Unless
it's
if
water.
that's brandy. If what you just drank is brandy, you're in for a long night, sir,
No, today it is
or a short night.
Michter's Sour Mash.
Hmm.
Um, I will say quickly that I bought that at my local liquor store, because in order to buy tickets for their allocated bourbons lottery, you had to buy something there, and so I'd been wanting to pick up Michter's for a while, so I did. and then just found out a couple days ago that I got to buy a bottle of Pappy. So it was a good week.
Congratulations.
At least in whiskey land. So anyway, enough about whiskey. That's Michter's Sour Mash. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking Oban, 14-year-old Oban.
Very nice.
It was a Scotch night. It felt like a Scotch night. So why don't we bring our good friend who is drinking the hardest of things to join us?
I've got a little night train in my teacup here, and doing well. What?
Whoop, that was a mistake. Sorry about that. I was cleaning the background and I hit the wrong thing. I apologize. My computer's jumping all around, and when we get to the transition part, I'll do a quick reset.
I thought I had a break at the song or something there for a second.
Yeah, you know, I will definitely run. I will definitely run a cleanup when we post this to YouTube. I will make that not happen. Everyone will be like, "Wow, this is so clean, no problems."
It's real.
What I had meant to do.
Have we introduced our guest? Go ahead. Are you going to introduce him? I don't think.
Well, I was going to say what I was trying to do before I hit the wrong thing was we have a new first take at an intro video that I was gonna run and get everyone's feelings on it. People can let me know whether it's awful or okay or whatever. So we'll do that, and then we'll actually introduce Ron. It's 30 seconds. Here we go.
Wow, impressive.
Well, with a little Pac-Man,
That was nice. That was a little. You're getting. If I was still working in television, I would have a job for you. I'll tell you.
I've already taken too many jobs. I will. I appreciate that though. Anyway, Ron Olesko, welcome to the program for the second time technically.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
It's good. It is. We tell our guests often that we're looking forward to having them back. You just got it quicker than most.
I didn't realize how soon it would be, but I'm happy to be here again. No, really serious. It's really nice to. I thank you both for inviting me to do this. I'm not used to being a guest, so excuse me if I seem nervous. I'm usually on the other side asking the questions, but
all good.
Well, this is fun. Here, there is no real other
That's
side.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the fun thing is, I remember, Ron, you and I talked very shortly after Jake and I started this thing, like I think late summer. And one of the pieces of feedback you gave me was basically telling us how nice it was that we're not really running interviews. Like, it was never the goal for us to run interviews. There were conversations with people that we like. Sure. Which is, I've been involved in plenty of interviews with people who do not know who I am and do not care, and those are atrocious.
Do you remember that movie? There's a scene in Wayne's World. Do you remember that movie where Wayne and the other guy were in a radio station, and there was a host not paying attention to him? And but you guys aren't like that. You guys, it's so natural. It just feels like we're just sitting around the table, chatting, and that's what it's all about. That's what people are enjoying.
Well, we tried something different. We basically said, there are a bunch of people trying to have either 15-minute, 45-minute sort of podcasty type things. but they all sort of had this fairly regimented kind of, you know, 5 minute introduction that leads into series of 8 to 10 questions that leads to an outro. And God bless Jake, because he has to put up with me. But I basically have 3 or 4 bullet points, and I'm like, yeah, we'll probably want to talk about this general subject, but that's about it. And half the time we don't even hit them.
That's it. That's you've just learned my secret of what I do on radio. I mean, you know, I maybe jot down a couple things.
We're giving it away, Ron.
Yeah, give it away. Don't tell anybody.
Right.
Yeah, this reminds me though. This talking head thing. My day job used to be in television production, and I worked. Probably before you guys were even born, the original CBS cable, which was a cable operation that was supposed to be cultural and classical programs, sort of like PBS on steroids. And they had a talk show which was called Signature. You never saw the host. It was one of these extreme 1980s close-ups on the guests where they were right in the camera all the time. Oh, it was the oddest thing. It's probably on YouTube somewhere, but no, this is fun. This is fun being with you guys.
I'll need to find that. I feel like I need to find that.
You'll enjoy it.
Well, I think in part, our friends, Session Americana, I remember talking to them once and saying, there's a great gig the other night. And Dinty looked at me and laughed, and he said, it's funny you refer to it as a gig. He goes, it just feels like we're playing in somebody's living room, and there just happens to be people there watching it happen. And I kind of feel the same way about the podcast. Like, these are a lot the same conversations that we have at NERFAs and FAIs and various other places, and we just decided to, live stream them.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I don't need the script then. I can just throw that away and.
Oh no.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Well,
I mean, I don't want to tell you what to do or not do, but
that's okay. So, where are we? I mean, what's going on with you guys? I mean, this is a crazy world we're living in, and I want to thank you for those nice things you said about Folk Music Notebook. But how are you two doing? I mean, you're doing this Tribal Mischiefs, and it's working out great. I mean, you're introducing us to a lot of people. You're both getting through COVID, okay?
In the grand scheme, I think Jake has more stories than I do.
I had it back in August.
But
I haven't even talked. I haven't talked about it much because I got very lucky and I didn't have it very severely at all, and so I actually have felt bad about talking about about it. So if anybody asks in a room, not that we have roomfuls of people anymore, we'll use it. Yes, I did have it, but I don't talk about it much. It was very simple and it went away. And then, of course, in the last week, my wife thought she had it. Her doctors thought she had it. She had some symptoms, and then went back into the nightmare that is quarantining in a house with other people. And, the kids stay in their rooms and my wife stays in our bedroom, and I'm sleeping on the couch and making food for everybody and down with the dogs. And luckily she wound up having 3 COVID tests in one day and came back clean. But,
that's good.
And, I can't even complain because we know people that have had really, really rough times with it. We know, our community's lost people to it. So yeah, it's been crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
wear a mask. Wear a mask.
Yes.
Yes.
I just happen to have these for sale at Folk Music Notebook. Talk about transitions, right?
Absolutely.
There you go.
That's folkmusicnotebook.com.
Right. A little merch section there too, and you can get these nifty sweatshirts and mugs. It's all about product. These guys, these days, you gotta.
Absolutely. I think that the challenge of this particular time period, the reason Jake and I started and did the entire "How you doing?" and I feed off the holidays. I love holidays. I love being with people. I love that. I think we told the story. Thanksgiving in my family, the smallest Thanksgiving of my life prior to this year was 45 people. To not be able to have that has been really rough. And
sure.
This year in particular, we usually do Christmas with my partner's family, and that just wasn't really in the cards, unfortunately, because both of her parents have COVID and are in the hospital.
I'm so sorry.
Which it has changed the tenor of the entire thing, and it's tough. I think it's tough for a lot of people. So I'm not saying any of this I don't believe that my experience is unique, and I think that's probably the tragic part of it.
Right.
Is the fact that there are, what was, I think, I can't remember who ran it, but there was some, and who knows, I didn't do the research, but it was a meme, so it has to be true. But it more or less said something to the point, and 1 in 1,000 Americans have died of COVID this year.
Yes,
it's frightening.
Which is astounding. But on that happy note, it is the end of the year, and I am very ready to punt 2020 to the curb.
Yes, please.
And I part of the reason that we wanted to have you for this week was to sort of do that, was to sort of talk about, because there have been good things that came with this year.
Yeah.
And, I think, not trying to speak for Jake, but I feel like, I don't know if the right term is survivor's guilt or whatever it is, but I feel like for the people that are having, like, anything good that's happened this year has been muted by the fact that this year has been this year. So you can't really shout from the rooftops, hey, oh, what a beautiful morning kind of thing, because you're just going to seem like a jerk.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, go ahead.
I was going to say, my experience, and you mentioned guilt, I kind of feel that too, because Folk Music Notebook, I don't want to use the word benefited, but people started flocking to it when COVID occurred. People started discovering us. I mean, last year, we basically doubled our audience from what we had in January to what we had in March. And in June, we started doing some of these folk festivals virtually. Mm-hmm. We did the Old Songs Festival. I mean, we had like 9,000 people tune in one afternoon to listen to the Old Songs Festival. Blew me away. I mean, we have, that was an anomaly, but we're still holding strong, and it just shows the power of the community and the power of this music. People need this connection, and I think that's, we were in the right place at the right time. Mm-hmm. And I feel guilty for it in some respects, but in others, that's the purpose that we launched it for.
Well, but for what it's worth, the particular sort of joy in your success in this is your success was in pulling people together, which is what people needed,
right? And
still need. I don't mean to say that in we needed it, now we're done, because that's not the case. But you were able to do so, and you're able to do so in a really interesting way. You took an industry, you took something, radio, which has been going through a lot of growing pains.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of, and growing pains might not be the right term, but contraction, but whatever you want to call them. A lot of sort of the challenge for radio going digital has, particularly for our community, been an astonishingly large hurdle.
It really has. And I'm 63 years old, and I'm really one of the younger folk DJs that are out there. Yeah. And to get some of the other folk DJs to adapt to using digital technology, it's almost impossible for some people, and for some, their stations won't even allow them to do it, which is really blowing my mind. And a lot of other DJs weren't able to record their shows from home, and I've been lucky because I've been doing Folk Music Notebook, and because was doing my WFDU show on occasion from home as well. So I had all the tools there and ready to go. I mean, I haven't been at WFDU since March, and that kind of kills me, because I used to love having guests come into the studios, but you got to adapt, and that's one of the things that our peers have struggled with.
One of the sort of joys in Jake and I have been working together through Pesky and college a cappella groups and all sorts of things for over 20 years, and we've always had ups and downs because there's no way to have a 20-year professional relationship with anyone and not have them. But at the end of the day, we're both lifetime learners. Like, we're both people that get really antsy if we aren't finding ways to adapt, change, and sort of learn. And I think at the end of the day, the challenge is, like, that is a good trait, but it's becoming a absolutely required trait for people right now. And I see it in the DJ community, as you mentioned. I see it in the musician community.
Yeah.
You've got musicians saying, well, I can't wait. As soon as this thing's out, we're going to get back on the road. And I'm like, okay, but like, think about, it's not like everyone's going to flock. You're not going to go a year of people being afraid to be 6 feet, closer than 6 feet to each other, and then all of a sudden have 5,000 people pack into a venue. Like, maybe you will, maybe you won't. I don't know, but I think there is. Anyway, I think I got the point across. It's tough, I think.
It really is. One of my other hats that I wear is I'm also the president of the Hurdy Gurdy Folk Music Club, which is a venue that we have a 170 seat theater in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Yeah. And we haven't done shows. The last show we had Jim Kweskin at the March 3rd. It was right before everything hit. Right before. And now our volunteers, who are also my age and older, they're nervous about coming back. And talking to the folks that run the facility, the laws might be you could only have 25% capacity. So doing the math, I'm going to be putting on a show for 30 people. That's going to be hard to do and hard to sell tickets and hard for artists to
Jake and I have played a lot of those shows, just for the record. It is possible.
Right. No, but
not optimal, but possible.
We've learned that we don't compete well with tulip festivals in the spring.
No, we do not.
One of our worst nights, we had Guy Davis performing for us, who was exceptional. But it was one of the rare times that both the Yankees and the Mets had a playoff game on the same evening. So that hurt. That hurt.
I can't. I'm gonna forget. Jake might remember. We played Cafe Lena years ago, and it was on such a, like, I can't remember. There was a festival. There were two other major concerts, and it was like the end of race season or something. That area.
I think it was the end of the track season or something like that.
But we had essentially sold out more or less 2 shows in a row, and I think we played to like 13 people that night. And it was like, oh,
wow, that's hard. Well, one of the aspects of Folk Music Notebook that you were talking about before, about adapting to this, right when COVID-19 pandemic hit, I came up with an idea to do this thing which we called then we called it Shelter in Place Showcase initially. Yep. And we started asking artists, look, record a 15-minute set from your home, put it up, we'll put your tip jar up, and and it was very successful. We had over 80 artists before we kind of put it on a hiatus for a while. But I was also remarkable that the artists were able to find new ways to do this. A couple of artists have already told me, gee, I know what it's like now to do radio, not seeing your audience, and it's a skill. But
I think that to me is what I found interesting, because I love feeding off audiences. Like, that's one of the things that I adore about performing. But I haven't found it, and albeit I haven't done a tremendous amount of live streaming or anything like that, but I don't necessarily find it to be distracting or weird. I think, and you and I have talked about the fact that I think our community really needs event producers. Like, we need people that, for an artist performing, can be running everything and can be popping up the comments from people like Gordon Nash, who are complaining about their bosses, and all of that fun stuff. And I think, I have this feeling that if, particularly our presenters, as they try to sort of figure out what the world looks for them in the short term, if they look at that particular opportunity, I think it will truly be an opportunity, because they need to keep their doors open, and musicians need help. It's just another hat that I don't think, a lot of musicians are well equipped to toss on.
It really isn't, and to make it look good, you do need somebody to can take the reins. Right now, artists I see touring, booking their own before COVID, obviously booking their own tours, doing their own bank accounts and such. That's a lot of work to begin with, and now to add production and to look good. I've watched some. I'm not going to name any names, but I have seen some online shows that really look so poor that reflects badly on the artist. And I know they're trying to make a living. I know they're trying to make it, but it doesn't help them, I don't think, in the long run when it looks, amateurish.
Yeah, and I think that's where we as a community, I think we're getting there. Like I know Folk Alliance has been doing workshops for 5 or 6 months now. Farm, the mid Atlantic version of Folk Alliance, has been doing some spectacular programming. Nerf is just starting to really jump in as well. But I think as a community, we kind of need to get together and not be secretive of how to get these things done right. We need to sort of put it out there, and if people don't want to learn, they don't want to learn, and that's fine. But I think right now you have like 3 or 4 people figure something out, and it doesn't go beyond those 4 walls. And there's some artists doing really tremendous things. I'm not sure if either of you seen any of Jonathan Bird's shows.
Yeah.
He bought a ton of old iPhone 3s, and he's got like 10 iPhone cameras all around the stage, and he looks like $1 million.
It really does.
And did it on the cheap.
And this broadcast that you guys are doing, the graphics. I mean, like I said before, I used to work in television production. I'd have to have a whole studio. I'd have to have graphic department to design it. I'd have to have an operator to run it, TD, director, camera operators, and here, one good person that could really handle this. But it should be off the artist. It should let the artists just do their thing, make their music, and relate to that audience.
And what, like the elevation that would come from that, like across the board, because I'm hearing from a lot of people in our community, like fans as well as everything else, about like just the Zoom fatigue, what you call, and like I get it, but to me, I'm never going to get tired of watching good performances.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's.
Well, I think this is going to be. I think this will become, when it's not the only option, I think it's just going to be another tool in the toolbox. It's going to be a Tuesday night, and artists did this a little bit, but it was almost more of a novelty than anything else.
Yep. That
it's going to be, for those artists that are touring, once God help us, we get back to that. It's a Tuesday night, and you're on the road, but nobody's booking shows on Tuesday night. So, maybe from your hotel room, again, if you know the production value, and I just need to point out, when you're talking about all the artwork and stuff, that is this guy over here doing all the art. I got it right this time. You shut up. I normally don't get that right. He figured out how to do those things, but on my own, there's a venue that I've booked in a little bit west of Boston called the Steeple Coffee House. I've been working with Joe Mercadante and working with my wife on it. And we've been having conversations about how to start a virtual venue that does Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever it is, something that's off the, artists want to book their Friday night shows, their Saturday night shows, whatever. And I think artists doing it, and possibly venues doing it, and filling those gaps, and how, like you said, the artist can't do everything, but having it be more of an acceptable option, not be a novelty, but also not be the necessity that it is now. Right. I think we're going to find an equilibrium at some point between, okay, I've got a Tuesday night and I'm just going to go online and I'm going to play music, and I figured out how to do that because it was my only choice for a year. And I have my suitcase full of iPhone 3s or whatever it is.
And
Thank you.
it's a good way also for people to discover new artists too. I mean, to me, a lot of these virtual reminds me of the showcases at Folk Alliance or NERFA, where you walk into people and even what I did at the Folk Music Notebook with artists in residence. I had artists get in touch with me who I hadn't met before and heard before, and some great stuff. In fact, would you mind playing a video? I'd like to introduce you guys. I don't know if you know Reggie Garrett. He's
well done there, Ron.
He's a brilliant songwriter who got in touch with me, and I've never met him before. He's from California, and I just fell in love with his voice, his guitar work, and his presence. And he does a video of a song called Ruby, and I wonder if maybe you have a moment we could take a little break and watch some really good music. Ruby does as Ruby will, enchanted eye. Don't ask her why. Ruby knows as Ruby feels, face to the sky, she's ready to fly. Sailing with angels, she's sailing with angels, so high she's gonna fly away. Ruby sails the moonish sea, show me your garden and all your mystery. Ruby's touch, a two-way street. Anything is possible, but nothing's for free. Sailing with angels, she's sailing with angels, so high she's gonna fly away. Show me how to live. She whirls in the sun with smile like bliss. She says life is rarely what you want. Just fall in love with what it is. Sailing with angels, she's sailing with angels, so high she's gonna fly away. Sailing with angels, she's sailing with angels, so high she's gonna fly away. Gotta go home. I just love him. I didn't know him until this year when I did this artist in residence showcase on Folk Music Notebook, and that's one of the joys, if you can find any joy in this whole situation, is that we are getting to see people that maybe we wouldn't have had to travel to see before. And I get a lot of feedback on Folk Music Notebook from people who are discovering new artists, because I think we have a pretty diverse playlist that we offer, and I think it's the whole idea of discovery, and that's what keeps this community going forward. It's new people, new voices.
Certainly, that's a huge sort of bonus to this, and that we all can be casting a wider net in what we're listening to, which is nice. I think watching what the Philadelphia Folk Festival did this year was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, talk about going international in a truly thoughtful way, complete with a drag show night. They, God bless them. But there's the other side of it too, which is also interesting and healthy. I've used the example a couple times. I'll use it again. Ellis Paul, plays generally 150 to 200 shows a year. And now what that meant is, for you, if you lived in Portland, Oregon, maybe twice a year you had an opportunity to see him when he came through town. Now with his Patreon, he's got 600 plus fans. Sorry, I think it's over 800 at this point, that are tuning in every week or so to see him. And there's a depth to the audience artist relationship in the way that some artists are really handling this. That is, honestly, it's deeper than a lot of things that we've seen historically speaking, I think.
It's also interesting because they're taking, people like Ellis are taking sort of a different approach to it. I've seen some shows where people think they're still on stage in front of a room full of people, and approaching it like Ellis does, sitting in his studio, in his room, in his house, you get that connection that you can't get on a stage, and I think he adapts so well to it.
Yeah.
And other artists do the same thing, and it can't replace going to a venue and sitting there with your friends, but it can bring you a little bit closer to an artist. And like you said, once a week or so, checking in, giving chance for artists to play new shows. Vance Gilbert does a great job like that as well.
Yeah.
The Monday Night Pajama Show.
Yeah.
And I think the first podcast we ever did, thanks to Jake, was with Adam Ezra. And if anyone's been the poster child of building deep relationships through this process, I mean, Jake, what show was he on?
Have you seen what he's been doing, Ron?
I haven't, no. I just saw him when he was on your show, but I have not had a chance to check him out.
He has been playing every night since about March 13th or something like that. He's, coming up on I can't remember what tonight was. Tonight was 270 or 275 or something like that. He's played every single night. He's played through COVID. And if he didn't have a career before, he has built a career around playing to a worldwide rabid audience. It's been phenomenal.
Yeah.
He averages something like 500 people a night, I think.
That's amazing.
Averages 500 people a night, and he has had as many as 75,000 in rewatches. 75,000 unique views of his shows in rewatch. Wow. I don't even understand it.
Phenomenal. There's an artist out in San Francisco, Meredith Axelrod. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's more of a traditional guitarist, brilliant. But her and her partner, they do this thing where they sit in their kitchen in their apartment in San Francisco each night, and they'll play for like a half hour, and it is just wonderful. She's drawing, I've seen 80 to 100 people tuning in every day for it.
Which is, and there is such strength to that particular thing. I can't remember. It's a cliche or it's a quote within the community, and I'm not going to be able to repeat it exactly, but it's something to the point of, getting 10,000 fans that are willing to give you $1 is great, but having 10 fans that are willing to give you $10,000 is amazing. So there's, this ability to really build. David Shulman has been on pretty much every show that we've done, more or less from the get-go. Points out that Alice Howe and Freebo have been doing a weekly show pretty much since the beginning as well. Another more friends of the podcast. But I find it interesting the evolution of that particular artist audience relationship, because I think that there are certainly plenty of artists suffering, but there are other artists absolutely flourishing. And it again goes back to that notion of who's going to figure this system out, and that's where again the community responsibility has to at least somewhat be, let's put everyone in a place where at least there's the possibility of success. Yeah. But we're really seeing some wonderful things, and I'm enthused about that.
It's I was talking to one artist, and they're thinking, well, gee, I've spent half my year on the road sleeping in hotels or somebody's lumpy mattress, and I play for 10 people. Online, my tip jar is overflowing, and it makes you wonder what the future is going to be. I know for us on Folk Music Notebook, we started a tip jar because I had nobody that could advertise. My advertisers the first year were artists, venues, festivals. And with everything closed, that money dried up. They couldn't afford it. So I first offered free advertisement, but then I started Tip Jar, and the audience came through. I feel like it's one thing I wanted to avoid. I didn't want to sound like public radio and doing a begathon or anything like that. But people have donated $5, $100, and it helps me pay the bills. Absolutely,
and there's oh heck, I'm gonna blank on her name. Indie rocker, had a Kickstarter, raised the most amount of money of any music. I'm gonna blank on her name, but she did a ridiculous TED Talk, basically on how to ask for money. Amanda Palmer. I'm being told from the other room. And it's amazing, and it's true. It is absolutely true, and she is dead on that if you are building relationships and you are creating value for your customers, your audience, your community, then they're going to want to contribute. They're going to want to feel like they're part of what you're doing. And I want to feel part of Folk Music Notebook. I love what you're doing.
Well, that's one of the things, when I started this, and we launched last May on May 3rd, the 100th anniversary of Pete Seeger's birth. But, I had been listening to other online stations, and I'm not knocking anybody, but each of them have their own little market. But a lot of them were going after more commercial artists. In fact, one insider for one of the channels told me, well, we're really folk music for people who don't like folk music. They'll play, the James Taylors and other artists that the mainstream will know. But... I saw our community, our folk community, with so many incredible songs, so many wonderful artists that really didn't have a place other than our individual shows. And, I'm on for 3 hours a week, and, Joe DJ in Iowa has a 3-hour show, and what happens the rest of the week. So that's kind of why I launched this 24/7 channel.
And as amazing as that's been for the artists, what it's done for the DJ community. You had a number of your peers losing their radio stations, losing their shows, losing their ability to sort of share this stuff. And these are the people that have heralded this art form for decades. Yeah, decades and decades.
I mean, we initially started, I wanted to have a couple of shows each night. First, I was going to do it Monday through Friday, maybe an hour or two each evening. And, it's expanded. And as you said, with COVID, we brought some more people on. So now every night of the week, some nights we start at 7. Joe Pizonik, he does a show on Sunday evenings and also on Saturday mornings live. And it's been great. And it's been building up that audience. You're talking before about making that connection. And that's one thing that we really try to do is make it more than just a streaming service. I mean, Spotify's out there. If anybody just wants to, put in a couple of keywords, the algorithms will walk by. But, all of us are working on this channel to, coordinate our shows, put our own playlists together, and each DJ has a little different touch to what they do. And so far, the audience responded. There's real nice connection building, and hopefully we'll continue to build upon that.
Yeah, and I think that's where you are creating the old world and the new world. You found the hinge, like you found a way to sort of connect people, and you've got younger artists paying attention. We were listening Friday or Saturday morning last week, and I just say, Alexa, play Folk Music Notebook, because you did the programming there, and I'm lazy, so that works really well for me. So I'm sitting at breakfast getting ready, and I sang that, and I'm listening to music, and 2 songs in, I'm like, that's Joe Pasonic. Like, this is definitely Joe's show. And like, next song ends, and all of a sudden Joe comes in. I'm like, yeah. And the personalities of our community and the ways that they champion music, you've allowed that to continue going in a wonderful way.
Well, thank you. But I think what's also good is that, as I said, each of us have different tastes, and defining folk music is something that no one will ever be able to officially do. I mean, there's so much, each of us have their own ideas of what folk music should be, and it's such a big tent genre that there is room for this, and there's room for discovery. And that's, I grew up on early FM radio where, you always had that experiment going on. And now with our diverse community, I think we're able to expand upon that, not just have a limited playlist of, here's your 10 artists, Emmylou Harris every 5 songs, Emmy's great, I love her, but there's so many others. I mean, Alice Howe you mentioned before. There's so many other people that really deserve a bigger audience.
I think one of the reasons that we've all, the 3 of us on this, have gotten along so well, is that we all sort of respect the platform that we have, and we use it to further those new artists. Not look, Emmylou Harris is great, don't get me wrong.
Yes,
and if I had a radio show, I'm certain I would play her. But there are lots of other artists that I would
But we've
play
been turning her
well.
down for years on the lounch stage. I mean, we're really consistent. Every time she's been begging.
We don't like to talk about it because, but I think you do with your platform the same thing that we try to do, which is, there are artists that people need to hear.
Sure.
And whether that is, Alice Howe or Christine Sweeney, who's, chatting with us right now, or tons of other artists that we've had. That's one of the it's not one of the reasons. It is literally the reason that we do the lounge stage every year is for that purpose. And getting that music out there because it deserves to be heard.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I should say, I do play Emmylou Harris, but not a steady diet like some other operations, because you do need to hear these other people. There's Emmylou Harris is going to be in the spotlight for so long, but who's those next artists that are going to be the next Emmylous?
They have to have the courage to step out and play those artists. Otherwise, you never get them.
Right.
Yeah.
And I swear, I've said this to a few people. If I close my eyes and just listen to it, a good song is a good song. It doesn't matter if it's somebody who sold multi-platinum records or somebody who's just, recorded in their basement and the first time it's being played. If it's good, it's good, and people respond to that.
I've told the story on here before, but one of the guys who works for me, with me, what have you, he's like 24, 25 years old. And I played some Cass House for him. And he was like blown away. He was like, who is this? And I was like, it's Cass House. It's a friend of mine. And he was like, she's awesome. And I was like, would you come, if I, booked her at my venue, would you come see her play? And he was like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's and I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole because there is the pigeonhole that is folk music. because you call it folk music notebook, and there might be people that go, I don't like folk music, but you play them some of these artists, and they go, holy crap, who is that?
Right. I honestly, I struggled with using the word folk music when I did this. The reason I picked folk music notebook is I had done a blog for Sing Out magazine for several years, and I figured, well, people might know me for that. Might as well carry it on. It kind of fits the idea of notebook, computers, whatever. But I like the F word. There's nothing wrong with folk music, and I think people have those ideas of seeing three guys in striped shirts singing "Kumbaya." It's obviously more than that, and if we can do whatever we can to make it, make people aware. Speaking of making people aware, I think you guys know him very well. I know I saw him at the Lounge Stage 2 years ago. Scott Cook. I first saw him at NERFA maybe 4 years ago, and
let's get out of the way.
Exactly. I mean, this guy is. I mean, he's like the next incarnation of Woody Guthrie, as far as I'm concerned. And I just today I did my top 10 favorites of the year, and I had to put Tangle of Souls in there. Not only is it a magnificent album, but the book that accompanies it, 240 pages of his story, it's just so well. I hope people will take a chance to look up his website, but maybe we have a song that we can cue up.
I love this country. I love the people and the land. But there's a lot of stuff happening that I can't understand. We got billions for bailouts. We got trillions for wars. But it's hard for working people to make a living anymore. Hear me out for a second. This ain't a partisan song. It ain't about right and left. It's about right and wrong. We're fighting over the scraps while a few are living like kings. 'Cause screwing us over is a bipartisan thing, and it's working people who made this country great, not the greedy opportunists or the peddlers of hate. When the day is coming, it's gotta come from you and me. Oh, say can you see you got a neighbor. We don't always agree. He's a bit of a redneck, according to a hippie like me. But if you're in the ditch, he'll pull you out, I know he will. And that's more than I can say for all those dickheads on the hill. He works hard for his family. He's got loyalty and pride. The company took all he gave and then cast them aside. 'Cause there's profit in poverty. Hell, there's profit in prisons. They don't even pay taxes. They just buy politicians. But it's working people who made this country great, not the greedy opportunists or the peddlers of hate. If a new day's coming, it's gotta come from you and me. Oh, say can you see? Oh, say can you see? And in New York Harbor, there's a lady with a flame, still calling in the huddled masses in liberty's name. There's fear on the airwaves and hatred wrapped in the flag, turning strangers into enemies and our riches into rags. And a revolution to break the grip of greed. Don't need a strong man or savior, but I believe we're gonna need whatever magic this old world's got left to start, and all the ammunition in the chambers of our hearts. It's working people
I just think he's amazing.
He is.
I play his music and I play some other songs, but when I was listening to him play right now, one of the words he used is the word dickhead. Now I can't play that on WFTU because the station management might have some issues with that. But since I'm able to on Folk Music Notebook to play some other words. Normally I play Eric Schwartz. You can't play a lot of his stuff on terrestrial radio. But since I started, I've only had 2 complaints. One person wrote me, said, "Is there a station I could find that doesn't play political music?" And I said, "Good luck, But this is folk music." And the other complaint was actually from a veteran DJ who thought I played too much political music, and I've used some language that might turn off people, and I should be careful because I'm going to lose an audience. And I was just like, well, fuck that. I'm gonna do what that's the reason we're doing this is because I think these are voices of a community, and what Scott sings about is what a lot of us are feeling, and I think we need these kind of platforms. So that's one of the reasons I'm happy to offer Folk Music Notebook.
Well, we have an explicit tag on our podcast, Ron, so you're free to say whatever you'd like here.
Oh shit! I'm sorry. I should have asked earlier. I didn't.
It's all good. But once we realized in the first season that we were going to book Vance Gilbert, we just decided let's.
I know. I heard. I figured it was safe.
Yeah.
It's what the message that Scott has, I think, is a really important one, particularly for people on the left side of the aisle, which is this is not like they're dumb, we're smart.
Right.
This is someone has convinced both sides that we're each other's enemies when they are essentially the people that are doing the nasty stuff. And Scott does a really good job of saying that in a respectful way, even with the inclusion of dickhead. Mm-hmm. In a way that I think is able to be heard by people on both sides. Yeah. And that's important.
Yeah, we need that. It's common sense, which I think a lot of the media has lost sight of, and to hear people like Scott singing these songs, I think it just gives us some things to think about, and there's just so much out there. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, there is the magic of music is that there will always be new music.
Yeah.
And to any human being that says a good song has been written since 1977. My answer to that is, so you stopped listening to music in 1977? Because I am routinely in a phase of discovering things and just being blown away, and that's the fun. That's the fun of it. And I imagine as a DJ, that's got to be,
it's the best. I grew up, I was a little kid during the folk revival. I mean, I remember watching these folk songs on Captain Kangaroo. He'd have his puppets acting out like Lemon Tree and all these things. And, honestly, that's the music that I grew up with, and I could just sit and listen to an Ed McCurdy album all day long. But it's the discovery of these new artists. And I really think that what the period that we're in right now, some of the finest songs are being written, and some of the greatest performers I've ever seen are out there performing. They may not be drawing the huge crowds that the Dylans and the Oakses and Peter, Paul, and Marys did in the '60s, but every word they're saying is just as important to our generations, and I say that in plural because we're all out there and we need this.
We're in it together, and if there wasn't, if there isn't a phrase that is more apt to a community. My motto has always been, and it's not like I made it up, but rising tide lifts all boats. I grew up on a sailboat, so it makes sense. But there is just truth to being able to celebrate all of the wonderful things that people do. And the more you surround yourself with people that are all working in the same direction and trying to accomplish something, the greater the output of everything. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of that is the heart and or spine, I guess, of what Jake and I are trying to do here, and to see what you were able to do, where you were able to pull in DJs in their late 70s into your digital format and artists in their early 20s and have everyone start sharing. Because I mean, the truth be told, you had the DJ tell you you're too political. I remember Jake and I, our first NERFA 14 years ago, a long time ago.
Long time ago.
We were just playing music in the lobby, and we had someone come up to us and basically say, "That's not folk music. It's not political. It doesn't count," and just walk away.
We've approached venues at NERFA, and we've flat out been told that they wouldn't book Pesky because we are not a political band or we're not political enough.
Wow.
And to be fair, that's fair. If that's your thing, like Perry Stein loves us. He's a good friend of ours. I don't know that we make sense at the Ethical Brew, because the heart of what he's trying to do is political. And Jake and I have our politics, and we're not particularly ashamed to talk about it, but it's also not the heartbeat of what we do.
It's also not the heartbeat of what folk music is. I mean, folk music encompasses so much. I mean, if you really look at what folk music was about, I mean, you had in the old days Cecil Sharp going down to Appalachia and finding songs from one community, and then he'd go to Texas, let's say the Lomaxes, finding songs from another community. It was all different, but it was all put under this umbrella of folk music. And now we're living in an age where you've got these new technologies. You've got these new communities, and it all comes together. It all speaks from the heart, I think, at the end of the day, and that's what makes it folk music.
And the access to all of those different sounds and all of those different things is unprecedented now. Like the ability to find and hear all of these varieties of folk music, and that to me, like the reason I will never shy away from folk as a term for our music is. It is perfect to me in that it is essentially all-encompassing. Is gospel music folk music? Absolutely. Is blues music folk music? You betcha. Jazz? Yep. Sure. Is James Taylor? He is.
Yeah.
Like it has such a wide breadth of things that absolutely positively fall to it that I adore it.
I will say, though, from a radio perspective, I kind of understand when people say, well, I don't want to hear so many electric guitars and drums and heavy metal sounds. I can see that to a point. If you're hearing a whole show of that, then it becomes something that doesn't meet the ears of the audience. But
agreed.
There is a connection, and if you can show that connection, from a Woody Guthrie song to somebody like they're not around anymore, but Black 47. I mean, I could see a definite connection between the kinds of music they were playing, and I'm sure if Woody was around today, he'd be playing an electric guitar and probably doing rap music. Because it's all about reaching people.
You look at folks like our second guests of the podcast, Gangster Grass, and what they've done in their fusion of things. And the fact of the matter is, like, I am not someone that generally naturally gravitates towards rap and hip hop. I'm also not someone that generally gravitates to like the techno and electronic stuff, but I'm forcing myself to actually start listening more. It's one of the reasons why it's probably not going to be the final song that in that little intro video I played. It's probably not going to be the one that we end up using, but I love it. I think it's a cute little ditty that like I'm like, all right, this is fun.
Yeah.
So like I'm loving to see sort of the cross-pollination that's happening. And to me, that at the heart of it, that is what folk music is. It's the cross-pollination. It was the black music community coming to the white community, and the white community being like, that's really good, and celebrating that. And there's so much history, and particularly in the Northeast region of the LGBTQ community, or at least the LGBT community being out when being out in music was absolutely unheard of. And we have proud members of that community who have been playing out for 30 plus years and able to sustain a career. Whereas, anywhere else would have been a death knell. So, I mean, there's joy in celebrating our diversity. And I think that, to me, Because everyone has their own definition of folk music. But to me, that's my definition. It's the celebrating of diversity.
Mm-hmm. That's a perfect explanation of what it is. I mean, it's a reflection of the times that we're living in. You know, we're not sitting in ghettos like little hollers in Kentucky anymore, where we're isolated from the rest of the world. You know, we're bringing all this in, and I think it's reflected in our music that we play. And you know, I'm happy we're able to present such a wide variety of songs and styles and ideas in the music. You know, I know we're I don't know how much time we're on here, but I do want to get a couple more songs in if you don't mind, because it's the holidays, and there's a song that I think I'd love to share, because I've known this artist for so many years. I have to honestly say I first met her in a hotel room. It was at NERFA.
Jake and I have told that story many times.
Yes, many times.
But I remember walking down the hall and hear her singing a song called "Long Island Cowboy." It just drew me into her room, and I just fell in love with her music. And she would later go on to be one of the founding members of Red Molly. And she's still working with Red Molly, but she's still doing her own solo work with her husband, Craig Aiken. And I always found everything that she does to be so intriguing. I know she's working on a pedal steel album next, but she just worked on a new song with Matt Nakoa, and it's for the holidays. It's called the Christmas Waltz. So I figure, since we're still just a couple days out of Christmas, would you mind sharing that now?
Christmas waltz, that song of winter's joy, that yearly warmed the cold dance halls and the hearts of each girl and boy. Well, I was just about your age when I first heard the tune. Sweet as grandma's apple pie, as bright as any old June. And when my granny asked me to dance, her smile was as big as the moon. She sang, "Christmas time is here again. Christmas waltz." Choirs of angels singing on high proclaimed our Savior's birth. So we'd sing into the night to wake the dreaming earth. Christmas waltz. The old dance hall has long been gone. My memories have blurred. The world outside's a strange new song, and I don't know the words. Thank you for the Christmas joy. You're sweet as season melts away. Let's sing it one more time. Sing Christmas time is here again. All my foes and all my friends, peace on earth, goodwill to all men. Let's dance the Christmas waltz. Let's dance the Christmas waltz.
You know, it's absolutely not an Abby video unless Ginger makes a good cameo in there.
Yeah, I think that's what sold me on the video. But yeah, you know what's great about that? It just shows, collaborating during COVID. Abby and Matt getting together virtually to record that song and write that song. It just shows what our community is able to accomplish and look for new ways, which is what we may have to do for a while longer.
Yeah, and I know Craig Aiken in particular we talked to him, he was on the show. He's really made essentially a whole little industry of cross-collaborating across the country with a number of different artists on a regular basis. And I know, or at least I believe, New Year's Eve, Gangster Grass has a show where they are trying a new technology that as long as you're located within about 300 miles of each other and you have your settings correct, you can have so short a latency that artists technically can play together.
Wow.
And they're going to be testing this out on New Year's Eve. So there's no such thing as no latency. There will never be such thing as no latency. But the way that it's basically been worked is as long as you are hard plugged in and you are within, particularly if you can be within 50 miles of each other, it's an actual possibility. And that is game changing.
Nice. Oh, I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Well, I think the times we're going through, I hope we never have to repeat this. But on the same token, I think it's also been it's been a way for us to kind of really look back and see what music's all about. I mean, folk music was people making music to entertain themselves in their homes. Mm-hmm. People singing around the kitchen table, and I think we're still realizing that a lot of these artists are writing new songs and learning from this experience. How about you guys? Have you been doing any music? I mean, you're so busy technology, but what about Pesky J. Nixon? What's going on?
Pesky has been relative. Jake and I have really been focusing on this tribal thing, and I've been delving pretty deeply into the technology side of things. I am becoming a devotee of Adobe products. I just today started with After Effects, which I don't recommend for anyone. It is evil and cruel, but it's super useful. So I gotta crack that nut. Jake?
When all this started and I realized I was going to be home for a long time, I was like, great, I'll get to actually play music because I never have time to do that. And then I didn't have time to do it. Mm-hmm. Life is so crazy. My day job is, in the beginning, my day job was many, many 16-hour days. I work in technology. I'm the chief technology officer for a IT service company. And so my clients needed us even more than ever. New clients needed us. And so my days are busy enough as it was. And with 2 kids in the house, there was not much time, even after I emerged, not a whole lot of free time. And then even on the weekends, the one bit of music that I've gotten to play was I played with Adam Ezra on the 4th of July, played a tune with him, and just have have not had the time that you would think sitting at home for 9 months would allow.
I know it's tough, but as a DJ, as a friend, I just want to put in a word. I'd love to hear you guys again, because Pesky J. Nixon is so much fun, and we need more music.
I think we'll get there in the not too. I'm lucky enough. My partner is a prolific songwriter who wrote commercially for years, and every time I say that I'm not really much of a writer anymore, she's got a taser, and it's forcing a change. It's nice. I've started writing for the first time in a long time, so who knows what will come of that? But we're getting back on the music horse, slowly but surely.
I hope so.
As long as I don't cut off my fingers in the process,
be careful.
I'm definitely managing. It's one of those things where I don't know. Jake has the challenge of having multiple kids in multiple dogs in a small space that he has to manage. It's Jen and I and a dog in the house alone, which basically means I've developed a lot of hobbies during all of this thing. The most recent weird one was I just decided I was going to start making jerky from scratch. So, I've been doing that a bunch for a couple of weeks. Well, I think once you get to jerky making, you've run the gamut. Like you've that feels more like a hobby exit than a hobby entrance.
You've reached the mountaintop there. Yep. But you were doing sourdough before sourdough was a thing too. I know that. Yeah.
Come from a family of bakers. That was fun. The sourdough thing happened. It was like, where do I get sourdough starter? I'm like, I got it.
Yeah, right.
Well, it was actually most of the human contact I had in the first 2 or 3 months was basically just propagating my sourdough starter and leaving it for people.
I've got my starter going for 3 years now, so knock on wood, keep going.
Nice. I was very excited to get a starter from Ethan, I don't know, a year or two ago, and sat in the back of the fridge and died. So.
My condolences.
Yeah, it is funny. You'd be surprised at how long they can kind of survive being ignored as long as they're in the fridge. If you have them out of the shut, but it is funny. I'll have to drop another propagation for you. One of the big things we've been having recently is I've been making sourdough English muffins once a week, which are super awesome.
I do the sourdough crumpets. I use that with my leftover starter. So.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe we could do a baking show someday.
I would, at this point, I feel like that's the only hobby I haven't picked up. So why not?
Well, I'm glad you got music.
No, and the music's been great, and you've been a big part of it. And it is funny because I threw it out earlier, but I'm actually there is humor to me, the fact that I can ask my digital assistant to play Folk Music Notebook, and she immediately was like, "Oh yeah, here it is." And there's a joy and just a weirdness to that because of the relationship that I've always felt that our community has had with technology. You did a really good job. I want to tip of the imaginary cap. That was really nice.
Thank you. I wanted to make it as easy for people as possible because, I know, frankly, our audience is a bit older. New technologies is a challenge to people, but, Alexa and Amazon and we have free apps for the iPhone and the Android phones. So trying to make it as easy as possible for people to find us.
I had a wonderful moment on Christmas. My mother, my brother, and his girlfriend were over. My mother was in my kitchen, and she was trying to put something in, and she needed a timer, and she knows that Alexa exists, but she's not really comfortable nor really how it works. So she just stares up at the shelf that it's on and goes, 20 minutes, Alexa, 20. What? And just stops. I'm like, that's not gonna translate. She's not gonna be able to word soup that thing together. That's not how it goes.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, there is, I don't know. I am having fun with watching people like you and people like Jonathan Bird and Scott Cook. That was a great video Scott Cook did.
Oh yeah.
And people sort of learning basic things that, light comes in handy. Getting cameras to work and all that stuff. So it's not so much that technology is a cornerstone, but just understanding the basics of this stuff it's another hat. It's just another hat that, I completely get the artists that say I already wear too many gosh darn hats, but it makes a difference, and it's fun for me to see people that have started figuring that out.
You have to, because life moves on. Radio has always been in a state of change. When television came in, people said, "Well, that's it for radio." They're not going to be around. But it's just finding what it's good at, and communicating with local audiences has always been something that radio is good for. And what worries me about some of the DJs I've come across that are so afraid to try things that are new, so afraid to do their shows differently and not realize that their audiences are also changing. One of the biggest things is radio has always been appointment driven. My show's on Sunday afternoon at 3:00. You got to be about to go over there to listen. I mean, even now on Folk Music Notebook, I'm getting people saying, "Oh, I missed that show. Do you have it archived?" I mean, we are archiving a number of our programs, and some of our other shows have other archives, so we're trying to get people to that. But it's a whole different ballgame these days, and
it really is, and it has changed that particular medium. The entire on-demand version of the world has really sort of changed the nature of that medium, but it's also kind of made it unique in a way that makes it very sort of standalone-ish.
right.
Meaning it is you still have the radio still has that sense of ephemeralness where it's going to exist for this moment in time and then it won't.
Right.
And I'm going to do my best to take a page out of your book, because you've been showing us how to wonderfully transition. We're talking about artists who started figuring out how to present themselves, but are also respectful of the fact that we've got a community that really does gravitate towards a relatively straightforward presentation style. But we've got these artists who started figuring out how to do that, but also insert a level of thoughtfulness to the way that those videos are put together. And one of my favorites is previous guest of the podcast, Elisa Amador, and the work that she's been doing. So we'll share her video together that I believe was her Tiny Desk submission this year.
Yep.
All of the people of all of the earth, each with a piece of all this hurt. Some take it in, some give it away, among other things that I can't explain. Childlike wonders that wither and flicker and fade. But when we're together, opening heart, it doesn't matter that all falls apart. When we're together, there lies the art. We'll make it better when it falls apart. Will it always fall apart? All of the people of all of the earth, each with a reason, a heart, and a worth. Some devastate when you're in their way and dig themselves deeper in hopes that you stay. Childlike blunders that cover up feeling afraid. But when we're together, wandering soul, we'll build a ladder and climb up
Wow.
Wow. The joy that I had, because we can watch each other backstage when videos are showing. The joy of watching you when the pull-out started happening, I saw your face just...
Oh, I got goosebumps right now. That was just so beautiful. I mean, she has such a great voice. It's such a great songwriter. But to see that video that she put together, I mean, that's the whole package. She mastered it. Beautiful.
You know, that to me, that is, if you're talking top, this is my dog behind me scratching things. Sorry. To me, that is absolutely top 10 for me of things that I've seen put out this year that just, I remember the first time I watched it, just like eyes bubbled up just like, oh, okay. And I just watched it sort of ad nauseum for a long period of time because in particular, I think that was released in May, June. Sort of that time period, that was a message that I think a lot of people really needed to hear.
Is that on her album Salt, I think it was? Is that the one she released this year?
I don't know that it's been released yet.
Oh, okay.
I think it has.
I know she put out an album called Salt, I think it was. But,
Salt was the most recent album that came out. I think that was technically 2018, though.
Oh, was it that long ago? Wow.
Technically. She's done... there were a couple of songs individually that were released, but I'm pretty sure that song has not been released.
Well, I've made my list. I got to get in touch with her. Get that on the radio. Gorgeous. Just a fantastic song.
Well, you know, I the joy, some of my favorite moments in being involved behind the scenes in folk music have been those moments when we've found artists that unquestionably were just, they were crushers. Mm-hmm. They were ace crushers. And you knew all they needed was an audience. That's all they needed. And that would be that. And there were times that Jake and I would meet those artists that were just so stunning and would laugh to ourselves. Because we'd be like, you know, we have this, for better, for worse, theory that for the lounge stage that we book, we don't tell people who's booked really until the last minute, because we want you coming because you trust us. We don't want you coming because there's a big name in there. Right. And there are a number of people, but I think the one that, not to speak for Jake, but I think the one that comes to mind most readily would be Irish Mythen.
Oh,
and having her.
I was just thinking of her as you were saying that, yes.
Yeah. About 4 or 5 years ago. And I remember, she was introduced and she started playing, and the two people on stage with her, what was it? It was Jimmy Ryan and
we put her up there with Jimmy. Jesus.
Was it Pat Victor? Was the third? And I just remember she started singing, and both of these veterans, these absolute veterans of the music scene, just went.
Yeah.
And it was joyful. And I was standing in the back of the room at the time, and I just had booker after booker come up to me and be like, "Where did you find this person?"
Nerf.
Nerf is the secret weapon in a lot of cases.
I remember I was a judge for the formal showcase. This is before you guys were involved, maybe 20 years ago. And one of the performers sent a CD, and I'll never forget, we were emailing. We did have email back then. All of us were like, "Did you just hear this guy?" And it was Joe Jenks.
Yeah.
And the first time we heard him, I mean, all of us had the same reaction, like, where has he been hiding? And that's the wonder of this community, is that there are still so many people out there like Joe and Irish Mythen, and probably could name and list people all night long.
Oh God, yeah. That's sort of. That's the fun. I think that's the presenter bug that I caught, and I think Jake did too. But I'll let him speak to him. But we did the Christmas show, and the highlight of the Christmas show to me was Benjamin Dakota Rogers, who some people know, not a whole lot of people know, but Benji. I wrote him about a week and a half, 2 weeks before we did the event. I was like, yeah, if you just want to record a Christmas song and send it to me, that would be great. He's like, oh, can I do an original? I was like, oh, you have an original Christmas song? He was like, no, but I'll write one. And he wrote, recorded, and sent me a song in a week, and it was aces. It was absolutely fantastic. And we ran the show on Christmas Eve, and that came up, and I was just sitting there with a Grinch smile on my face, being like, anyone that didn't know him will watch this and come away being like, look at that guy.
Right. I remember once I booked Sophie Buskin at the Hurdy-Gurdy, opening for Susan Werner. And it was
That's a duo.
Watching Susan reaction to Sophie was the same thing, and they did a duet at the end, which I think there's a video floating on YouTube from it. It was just phenomenal. Just one of those moments.
I've told the story on here of bringing. You've probably seen the Black Feathers, I think.
Yes.
And bringing the Black Feathers to Steeple Coffee House and having them open for Vance Gilbert, and Vance giving them some of his time. Which might be one of the most Vance things I've ever heard, for all of his curmudgeonly, crotchety, for him to be like, no, you folks need to hear, you don't need to hear any more of me. You need to hear more of them, and giving them some of his time.
That's phenomenal. It's one of the joys of our community. The other day, or actually it was actually this afternoon, I found a box of photographs that used to be in my mother's attic, and I hadn't opened it. And in it were photographs from my early days at WFDU. And we did a benefit concert. We used to do this annually. And I was looking through the pictures. There was one picture of me introducing Suzanne Vega, who no one had heard of at the time. Jack Hardy was there. Eileen Ivers, who I'm sure many of you know from Irish fiddler with Riverdance. Yeah. And looking at all these people, and at Christine Lavin, and just realizing, this was the first time most of that audience heard or saw these people, and look where they are now. And that's always these new discoveries out there. That's what I think keeps us going. And
that's the joy, is just finding those people. Like Chris Matthews is another person that participated in the show last week, who's just she's the funny thing is she and her partner Heather May are, in my mind, two of the more significant up-and-coming young voices in the scene right now, and they are as divergent musically as they come. You've got a pop giant voice anthem writer in Heather May. Like she writes songs. Anyone that says that no one's writing political songs has not heard of Heather May. And Chris she is an old fashioned troubadour. Yes. She is writing songs that Woody Guthrie would be sitting there taking notes on. She is amazing, and I adore it. And I think that sort of leads me into the. I don't have formal questions ever for these things, but I did want to ask the question, like, we're at the end of the year. What are you guys most looking forward to when you think 2021? What is it about it, aside from not being 2020, which I think we can all relate to? But what is it about 2021 that has you excited?
Well, for me, it's well, first of all, to me, a calendar date doesn't change anything. January 1st. December 31st, nothing's going to miraculously change, but it is a time where we look back and reflect on where we've been, and you need these place markers. Yeah. And for me, I think looking forward, I think it's just the idea of hope. We have a new administration coming in, the chance that we could make some changes, the fact that some of the garbage we've been putting up with the last 4 years is going to have gone. But artistically, it's going to be interesting to see how our community reacts and how we respond to it. Now, life's not going to go back to normal in my estimation. We may or may not have festivals this year. And if we do, they're going to probably be different than they were. So how do we handle it? That's what's going to be. I'm just intrigued by it. But what I have seen in the latter half of this year is how artists have responded to the pandemic, the creativity that they've shown, and I just think that's going to continue. So I'm just looking forward to more great music. I didn't think we'd get anything good this year. When I put a top 10, I do my 10 favorites. I don't call it a best of, but I do have 10 artists that I find that put out extraordinary albums that reflect the year, and I was just overwhelmed with how many I had to choose from. Yeah. Thinking a year it was going to be lost, it really wasn't.
No. Well, they say a happy songwriter doesn't write any songs because when you're happy, what are you going to write about? There's no lost love or tragedy or anything like some of the greatest songs come out of that. It occurred to me earlier in this conversation. I don't remember the context exactly, but if that's true, I think we're going to see some of the best albums ever in the next year or so as these things get fleshed out and we sort of purge our systems. The songwriters among us purge our systems of all of the shit of the last year.
Yeah.
And in particular, the people like Scott Cook, I don't even think it's a purging so much as a cutting down to the meat of the issue. Yeah. And that's, I think, this is a really weird musical analogy, but you had sort of like the late 80s, early 90s rock scene with Guns N' Roses with, 12 guitar players, an 80-piece orchestra behind them. And what was the musical phenomenon that hit a year after that basically was a big middle finger was Nirvana. 3 guys, 3 loud, angry guys, and that's it. And I think you're gonna see a bit of that from a messaging perspective. Not I'm not saying fewer people on stage or anything like that, but you're gonna have a more direct message, and I'm looking forward to it. Any evolution in art is fun to see.
Sure. Folk music, it grew out of the 1950s into the 60s and all of the issues that we faced then. It's still been going strong, and what we've had the last 4 years. I think this year, I think it showed what we can do and what artists can do. So, like you're saying, I think this is a good time for to flourish.
Absolutely.
Well, you mentioned flourish. I have one more song, if you don't mind, I'd like to play. Talking about transitions, when we talk about this year, and obviously there's so many stories: the pandemic, the election, and of course Black Lives Matter. Not that Black Lives Matter was new. It had been around, but the attention that was thrown at it and the awakening. People make jokes about being woke. I hope to God we are, because, we don't want to go through life asleep. And I think what Black Lives Matter showed us was where we can do better, what issues that we have in ourselves that we didn't even recognize. And there's a song that, to me, if somebody said pick one song from 2020, this would be it. It was written by our good friend Tom Prasado Rao. Yeah. He wrote it a few days after George Floyd was murdered. Tom has his own issues that he's been going through, and he felt he couldn't record it properly. But he asked others to do it. And last count, it was well over 100 artists have recorded this song. But there's a version that he recorded with his friends at Fox Run Studios.
Neil Eckstein.
Neil Eckstein, Jagoda, I think Eric Schwartz was on it.
Yeah.
And Tom himself. And I think the song says it all. It's called $20 Bill for George Floyd.
Some people die for honor. Some people die for love. Some people die while singing to the heavens above. Some people die believing in the cross on Calvary Hill. Some people die in the blink of an eye for a $20 bill. Some people go out in glory, yeah, with the wind at their back. Some get to tell their own story, write their own epitaph. Sometimes you see it coming, sometimes you don't know until you run out of breath with a knee on your neck for a $20 bill. Oh, brother, I never knew you. And now I never will. Oh, but I make this promise to you. I'll remember still. So now, let this be our communion. It's time to break the bread. do this in remembrance, just like the good book said. Sometimes the wine is a sacrament, sometimes the blood is just still, sometimes the law is the devil's last straw, the future unfulfilled.
That really was probably one of the more stunning pieces of music written in 2020. And thanks, Ron, for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
We are transitioning to the end of the episode, the end of the show. So we put Ron in the backstage as we close out. But wanted to, we put Baby in the corner. We want to wish everyone a very, very happy new year and hope for better than the last. And, we'll be back. We're really excited. We've got a bunch of stuff coming up, and we'll keep the projects running wild. Doing the charity show for NERFA last week was quite an event, and I think we'll probably do a number more of those in the not too distant future, because I like editing hour-long videos because I'm a masochist. That's coming up in the near future. Jake, anything you want to add?
No, that's right. This is our last episode in this year. I think that song is probably a good way to go out. There's incredible music out there that deserves to be heard. There is powerful and important music out there that needs to be heard. So thank you to Ron for getting that music out there. Peter Mulvey's Take Down Your Flag came to mind as I was listening to this. There are a lot of important songs that are being written and are being recorded. I think you're not paying attention if you don't think there is. But music has been one of the few things to get us all through this year, whether it's been watching Friends or making it ourselves or listening to it or whatever. And I will be glad for the next show to not be this year.
Yeah, I was trying to put together. Originally, I was going to put together like a 15-minute thing for us to run before the show actually started. That would have ended with a giant 2020 window being shattered and broken because it just needs to happen. But you know, I'm looking forward to continuing to learn new things, but from a more inclusive perspective of being able to do it actually together again. And who knows how quickly or slowly that will happen. But that's my New Year's resolution, is to find more ways to connect. And again, special thanks to Ron, our guest this week, because he is someone that connects art and audience. It is the heart of what he does. Friend of the show and frequent commenter on Twitch, Gordon Nash, for doing the same in both the work he does for Ron on Folk Music Notebook, as well as his Wise Madness blog that he has been running for well over a decade and a half. Just thanks to everyone out there, not just the creators, but the people connecting the creators with the ears that need to hear it.
Yeah.
And with that being said, he's Jake Bush.
He's Ethan Baird.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next
year.
week. Ba-do-do-do-do-do. Ba-do-do-do-do-do. And we didn't leave. We're still here because that's what
You
we do.
fooled us.
And we're back.
It's always a quick rundown, but I don't know, because I know, Ron, most of the time you're not watching us live. You're watching sort of the episodes on YouTube. Are you aware? Because we don't put this part up on YouTube. Every episode we always keep going. We end it and then we keep going.
Uh-huh.
It's more of our chance to sort of have a quick wrap up and say, how was it for you?
I've seen a couple of them live. I saw the Vance Gilbert one, and I think your first one too. But I have to admit, I've been Sundays are a little tough for me usually. But one of the things we're doing also on Folk Music Notebook, we're now doing a live broadcast of the Greenwich Village Folk Festival the first Sunday of the month.
Nice.
So that's been a fun event. But what you guys are doing is just incredible, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for having me here tonight, and all the nice things you said about me. And the check is in the mail, so I will. I appreciate it.
We do our best to make our guests feel. We want them to feel comfortable, but also we shower them with enough praise to make them uncomfortable. So, it's.
Well, I appreciate it. I also appreciate you mentioning all the other hosts on this station too, because those are the ones that are really making a difference. We have so many people that do interviews and have guests. One of my goals for Folk Music Notebook was always to make it more than just a streaming playlist, and that's what I'm working hard to do. And having all these great hosts and people like Gordon, all the hard work he puts in, it really makes it worthwhile. And hopefully in 2021 we can continue doing things like that and adding more to it. I want to get more news and such into it about our community, and keep spreading it. So thank you guys.
I think the community of the roots folk scene is ready for sort of the next big growth spurt. Like, we're ready to figure out what the next step is in opening the doors wider, letting more people in, letting different people in, and making sure that there are seats at the table for them. Not just that we're allowing them in, but that they actually have some level of ownership. And I'm looking forward to it, because I'm loving the fact that we're hearing from different voices and that they have such profound and wonderful things to say.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges is, as to, three old white guys in the room now, the conversations that we've had with people of color in the community and other, different sexual orientations or whatever it is, and Ethan just made the point, like, there's a difference between opening the doors and saying, we want you here, please, you're part of this community, and them walking in the door and seeing someone that looks like them up on on the microphone, someone that has the same sexual orientation as they do, and I hope I'm using the proper words, on the microphone, and that's certainly a challenge I think probably all three of us faces. We're trying to provide a platform, but we can even in everything that we do, we can only go so far, and I don't know how to even broaden it.
That's an issue I've had too. I mean, I've really wanted to diversify, some of our shows, but frankly, radio is an art that not a lot of people are getting into these days. It's hard finding new hosts to do it. That's why I'm 63 years old and they call me the kid.
That makes Jess faint off the baby.
Yeah, right. She's an exception. She's phenomenal, but she's an exception to it. They really aren't a lot in there.
Yeah, it's an interesting vocation. That I'm thankful that people like you are keeping as relevant as it can be.
And I'd like to say, if you or anybody else hears of people, please send them my way. I'd love to talk to more people. Mm-hmm. Right now, the only thing I can do is play their music, and it's hard finding people. Reggie Garrett, who we played earlier, I hadn't heard of him before, but he hadn't heard of us. It's trying to diversify our own community that makes it happen. So make those connections.
Well, that's particularly why I'm really excited about next week's guest, Catherine Morris. I don't know if you met her. She's come to NERFA a couple times. She's awesome, and I'm going to describe her physically only because she is such a presence. It's worth noting. She's like 6'3". She is a fucking Amazon. She is awesome. And what she has done, she has built a community out of nothing, a musical community out of nothing. She's literally reached into the community and said, I know you're musicians. I know you have something to say, and pulled them out and gotten, the last show of hers I went to, she had a 16-year-old rapper, a 22-year-old DJ, and a 77-year-old jazz singer.
Oh, wow.
All performing the same night, and it was all quality.
Is that
and it
Catherine,
was all respectful.
Catherine with a K or with a C?
C. Catherine Morris. She runs Boston Arts, Music, and Soul, which is the name of her organization. BAMS.
Okay, I'll definitely check her out.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome.
Well, you guys are pretty awesome too. I mean, for doing this and all the hard work you put into learning the system and teaching it to others and making it look good. I mean, that's really what counts. People, I know from radio, people like to hear things that sound good. They don't like things that sound sloppy or amateurish. And even when you make mistakes, you roll with it. That's what it's all about.
I mean, the number one rule of acting is never let them see you sweat. It's not that you don't make mistakes. You always make mistakes. You just don't draw attention to it. Or if you do, you do, right. Is it Eddie Izzard, one of our favorite comedians, like 90% of his best comedy is making fun of himself when he makes a mistake.
Right.
So he's built an act around his mistakes.
Around fucking up, yeah.
Anyway, I thank you, Ron. Honestly, thank you so much for being here. We'll call it a night because it's pretty much we're dead at 2 hours on the air, and I really appreciate the conversation. We'll keep talking. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the folk DJ showcase.
Yeah, I'm still like herding cats. I'm trying to get everybody to get all their pieces in now, but we're getting there. So we'll have something soon.
No doubt. Let me know how it goes. Let me know if I can help, and we'll talk.
I will definitely be talking to you. I appreciate it.
Sounds good.
All right, guys.
All right. For everyone out there, we're ending the broadcast, and who's got the music?
Oh, that's my time for my drugs. I thought I shut my alarm off.
I was like, someone's playing us out. What's going on? This is fantastic.
I have to take my medicine. I have to put it on at 10 o'clock or I'll forget.
No worries at all. It was one of those like, huh? I'm like, and then Jake left. I'm like, so it's not even, what's going on? All right.
And I couldn't hear it because I had my headphones on.
No worries. Have a wonderful night, Ron. Great seeing you.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.